Hey everyone, how's it going? You know, fighting games aren't just about the characters, the combos, or who's got the fastest hands on a controller. Sometimes the stage itself is out to get you. Over the years, developers have come up with all kinds of creative and sometimes downright mean hazards that can turn the tide of a match in an instant. So today we're taking a look at some of the most memorable and unique stage hazards in fighting games. Starting with walls. Almost every fighting game has walls, even if most of the time they're invisible boundaries. They stop you from walking off the stage, shape positioning, and influence strategy. Save the occasional infinitely looping stages like in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Sega Genesis aka Mega Drive. But I know what you're thinking. It's a bit of a stretch to count these as stage hazards. They're usually considered simply part of the arena. But when games introduce walls that interact with gameplay in new ways, they start to feel like hazards. Take Tekken 8 for example. 3D arenas with visible walls change how matches are played. You get extended combos, corner pressure, and unique interactions that weren't possible in open stages. While the wall itself doesn't damage you, it suddenly becomes a meaningful element of risk. In Dead or Alive, hitting an opponent into a wall can stagger them, launch them, or bounce them in unpredictable ways, opening up huge combo opportunities. The environment itself can punish mistakes while giving skilled players a new tool to control the fight. And then there are walls that do actively harm you. An early example is World Heroes with its deathmatch mode. Here, walls aren't just a threat because of positioning. Spiked walls, electrified ropes, and even flaming ropes deal damage if you touch them. Step into the wrong place, get thrown wrong, and suddenly you're taking real punishment on top of what your opponent is already dishing out. And sometimes it can get pretty creative. Pit Fighter, for example, took a different approach. Instead of solid walls, the arena was surrounded by a rowdy crowd. Get knocked into them and they'll shove you back or even hit you, dealing extra damage. Sometimes they'll toss weapons into the fight too, turning the edge of the stage into a chaotic, unpredictable hazard. Another classic fighting game hazard is the ring out. Instead of knocking your opponent's life bar down to zero, you can win just by sending them flying out of the stage. Of course, we all know 3D fighters like Virtua Fighter and Soul Calibur built their entire identity around ring outs. But there are some interesting twists when we look outside the usual suspects. Take Real Bout Fatal Fury for example. Instead of the traditional invisible walls, stages had barriers around them. You can smash your opponent into the edge over and over, and once that barrier is destroyed, suddenly the stage becomes lethal. Knock them out after that, and it's a ring out. Mortal Kombat Deception put its own spin into the idea. Certain arenas had what were called death traps. Push your opponent into the wrong spot and they'll be instantly killed by spikes, fire, acid, or whatever gruesome device was waiting there. Mechanically, it's the same principle as a ring out. The opponent is forced out of the playable space and the round ends immediately. The difference is, instead of simply falling, Mortal Kombat gives you an over-the-top execution. It's basically a ring out with a brutal Mortal Kombat makeover. Toshinden 4 takes the idea even further. Certain stages have panels that randomly disappear, opening up holes in the floor. One wrong step and you're not just losing the match, you're dropping straight into the void. And then there's Super Smash Bros, which treats ring outs not just as a hazard but as the core of the game's strategy. The edges of the stage aren't just boundaries, they're a tactical playground. Players can grab the ledge, jump back, or use air mobility to recover and avoid being knocked out. Characters have a wide variety of aerial movement and recovery options specifically designed to survive near the edge. You can force your opponent into a vulnerable position, trap them near a blast zone, or edge guard to stop them from coming back. The interaction between player movement, character abilities, and the stage edges turn ring outs into a rich system of decision making. In Smash, the edge isn't just dangerous, it's central to how matches are played. And to finish today's videos, the next hazard type is obstacles, and by that I mean physical objects placed inside the stage itself, things you have to fight around. Unlike walls at the edge of an arena, these sit right in the middle of the action, breaking up space and forcing players to think about positioning in a way fighting games don't usually ask for. A clear example is Tekken 4's parking area stage. This arena has big concrete columns planted right in the middle. They don't damage you, they don't collapse into explosions, they just sit there, but they change the match completely. You can't always move straight forward, your combos might get cut short. Sometimes you end up with your back against a column and suddenly you're cornered in a very unusual way. These columns acted like a quiet hazard, reshaping how every fight in that stage played out. But then there are cases where the obstacles do more than just stand in your way. In the deathmatch mode of World Heroes, for example, you don't just avoid walls. Some stages have landmines spread across the floor. Step on one and it explodes, dealing damage. Suddenly you have to be extra careful about where you step, since you can now be knocked out not only by your opponent, but simply by making a wrong move. And sometimes these obstacles don't even stand still, waiting for you to make a wrong move. Instead, they come after you periodically, forcing you to move out of the way or suffer the consequences. Examples include the cars driving around the Gambler's Paradise stage in Dead or Alive 4, which will literally run you over if you aren't careful, or the F-Zero ships flying around at top speed in the Big Blue stage of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Honestly, Smash alone has a near infinite number of hazards like this, obstacles around the arena you have to dodge to avoid taking damage or being thrown around. And it's not alone in it either. Most, if not all, platform fighters follow the same formula, featuring arenas full of dangers that can get you killed. Often it's not even just one type, but many types of crazy traps all at the same time. Just as another example, let's look at PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, a lesser-known platform fighter that had stages mixing elements of two different franchises, which often ended up creating a rich arena filled with dangers that would change and behave differently as fights went on. Also, speaking of newer stuff, Street Fighter 6 has its own Extreme Battles mode, which leans into chaos. These matches use gimmicks, modifiers that randomly spawn or apply hazards during the fight. Bombs drop onto the stage, there's a bull run where a bull charges across the arena, and other freaky stage events that force you to move, dodge, or get hit just by being in the wrong place. It's not constant, but these hazards change the fight on the fly, and remind you that even in a classic 1v1 fighting game, the stage itself can come alive in surprisingly aggressive ways. Okay, I lied, there's actually going to be another section in this video, and I shall call these hazards… how about mechanic changers? It's getting a little confusing here, but hear me out. The idea here is a hazard so massive that it fundamentally changes the way the fight happens. You can't avoid it, no matter how clever your positioning is. The hazard is just there, doing its thing, and you have to deal with it. The best example, and the reason why I even shoved this section in here, is Dural's stage in Virtua Fighter 2. This legendary monochromatic boss had its own very particular last stage, which happens to be underwater, and it fundamentally changes physics. Now your movements are slower, your jumps more floaty, and there's no way around it. It's just how it is, and you gotta deal with it. Is it a stage hazard, or are we crossing into arena mechanics? I don't know, you be the judge of that. The second case is a little different. In the original Fatal Fury games, you usually had the option to go into the background plane to dodge or attack your opponent from a different angle. Except in the boss stages. Take Fatal Fury 2 for example. Billy Kane's stage is inside the Big Ben clock tower with the large gears clearly visible in the background. Here there's no option to move to the other plane. Instead, if you get hit and stand there, you take damage and are thrown right back into the foreground, effectively transforming that normally inhabitable background plane into an environmental hazard. It changes the mechanics, but it's a little different because you need to be hit by your opponent to experience it. Does it count? Honestly, I don't know. Look, I'm making this stuff up as I go, so let's hear your opinions in the comment section. It's up to you guys now, because that's a wrap on today's look at some of the most interesting stage hazards in fighting games. Of course, this doesn't cover everything, there are plenty of other hazards out there, and I'd love to hear which ones you remember or enjoy. Drop it in the comments and let's see what you all think. For now, this has been Cammyplayer, and I'll see you guys later.